was just like so sick of working that job, and I was playing like 1 gig a week, and I'm like, man, I really want to do music full time. Once I was able to play enough gigs, that's when I finally quit that job and started doing gigs full time.
Welcome to the DIY Artist Podcast. I'm your host, Nico Santana. This is brought to you by DistroKid. Get 7% off your yearly membership plan, distrokid.com/VIP/Nico Santana. All right, we are back, everybody. Welcome back to the DIY Artist Podcast. I am super excited, as always. I always introduce a special guest, and this time is not an exception. We have Joey Calderiao, who is a friend of mine, somebody who I've worked on music with back in the day, somebody who I've seen grown up, and essentially have seen not just grown up in terms of age and maturity, but also their business. Like, his business has been, in my eyes, booming. He's been doing really well, and he's been on the independent tip for as long as I can remember. Of course, he has some other business dealings, I'm sure, with labels and whatnot, but at the end of the day, this guy has taken the initiative to work on his own music, to launch himself out there as an artist, band and solo artist, and do something of himself, rather. So welcome to the DIY Artist Podcast, my friend.
Thanks for having me, man. Much love. Appreciate it.
Glad we can make this happen. I know it's been a couple weeks in the making with some rescheduling issues and whatnot.
Sorry about that.
No, that's my fault too, man. And I'm glad that we got you here today and are giving you the appropriate platform to be able to kind of just share with the audience, what you're about, how you've done what you've done, because you're a full-time artist right now, and just seeing kind of the inner workings of your business. But before I get started, I wanted to give a huge shout out to DistroKid for sponsoring this podcast episode. Obviously, they make it super easy to get your music out there for the world to hear. I know I use them. I used them for a couple years, so I appreciate DistroKid for not only allowing us to distribute our music worldwide, but also for enabling things like this, resources like this, to come to fruition. So thank you, DistroKid. And with that said, man, first off, man, how is life? How are you doing? I want to hear all about it.
Life is pretty crazy right now, honestly. Given all the things going on in the world right now, but at the same time, it's also allowed me to kind of shift my attention to, sort of on my music and change my objectives. Like, within the past 2 years, I went from mostly a gigging artist, playing out, lots of shows and making that my full-time thing, to now focusing a lot more on the original artist side of things, and taking it a little bit more on the screen, through social media and whatnot. But it's been quite a ride. It's
definitely a roller coaster, man. Yeah. And I mean, for me at least, social media is definitely a benefit, and kind of just being available in the digital world or whatever has definitely provided its benefits, much like, this podcast. But at the end of the day, because there is so much consumption of content, and you feel like you have to put out something every single day, twice, 3 times a day, even in some cases, if you're on TikTok or not, whatever the case is, like, there is also that high stress, high anxiety, high level of like, I'm always on. Have you felt that in the last,
totally.
couple months, or what's that been like for you?
It kind of comes in ups and downs, but yeah, especially feeling it right now, I think. So I don't know. Yeah, definitely trying to balance that. That's that big word. I'm trying to I'm trying to balance my personal life and exercise and taking care of myself mentally, and it's harder sometimes than others, but I've just realized how important that is for me. It's taking care of me first before I really focus on bringing out all this content to people, because sometimes it can feel a little bit forced when I'm like, I feel like shit, but I'm being like, have this feeling like I need to constantly be posting and connecting with people, but some days I just don't feel like it, and I think that's okay also. But it's been a bit of a struggle, especially recently.
I feel you, man. I think we're wired as human beings to have those seasons of ebbs and flows, right? Like, if you think about, back before, like, the hunter-gatherer days, we would have seasons of harvesting and reaping and hunting, and then there would be kind of like the off-season, right? Like the off-season where you would just rest and kind of recover and regain your energies for the next one. But with everything being so accessible to us nowadays, like, where's the break, where's the
Right.
lapse, where's the time.
Right.
What I've heard some people say is like, where's that margin where you have a little bit of time to yourself to explore, to live, to just live life, so that you can bring those experiences back out to the world to see. And I think, you know, kind of the downside of social media is that we don't get enough of that anymore.
Totally.
You know, at least seeing that for myself. But you've done a really good job, you know, again, from the outside looking and navigating those two worlds. I understand that obviously the pandemic changed a lot of things for so many artists, and you definitely stepped it up with, you have a Facebook group. So talk a little bit about how that got started and where you're at with that right now.
Yeah, so that page is called Joey's Bag of Donuts, and it's on
Nice.
Facebook groups. And you know, when everything started getting shut down and I wasn't playing gigs anymore, it gave me the opportunity to start recording cover videos. Not really gave me the opportunity, because I always had that opportunity, but you know, I didn't know what else to do with my time, and I really enjoy recording covers. So I would record these like one-man band cover videos of some of my favorite songs, post them to Facebook, and they started growing, and you know, people would start sharing them and word would get out. So I started creating, you know, this small following through Facebook, and thought, you know, a Facebook group would be a good way for me to stay in contact with some of these people. And so that's how that Joey's Bag of Donuts kind of came into fruition. And from there, it's been really helpful for me to, you know, like connect with those people and create some of those relationships. And I've created some merch and stuff like that to, you know, help support myself a little bit. And it's been really cool, man, just having that personal connection with some of these people that, you know, that go from watching the videos and now are fans and friends. So it's been awesome.
That's awesome, man. TikTok has been kind of the pride and joy of a lot of artists in terms of getting discovered and utilizing that to leverage their social media presence. But you've I don't want to call it you've gone backwards, but you've tapped into somewhat of a less popular, or perhaps even less treaded upon path in Facebook groups now,
Right.
and Facebook specifically. So have you noticed that Facebook is your primary, what's the word I'm looking for? Not primary platform, but perhaps your primary community on social media, or are there other social medias that you've experimented with and have found equal traction in, and perhaps even equal profitability in?
Yeah, I would definitely say that the Facebook groups have been definitely my primary sort of community, and Instagram has been a huge one as well.
Yeah.
TikTok, I'm still just kind of navigating around and starting to get better at, but leave that for the younger kids, I guess. But no, I'd like to get better at TikTok, and I am starting to post more on there too. Just, you know, it seems to kind of be the future. Well, it already is, you know, it's not like it, but yeah, just kind of trying to expand to as many platforms as I really can, but also trying to focus in on certain ones, you know. But YouTube is another one that's been very helpful. So
Huge, man. And I'll definitely link all your stuff down on the description of this video. I definitely want to give you the appropriate promotion, and I do run campaigns on these podcasts, meaning that they do get blasted to people even if they're not part of my, you know, network or YouTube subscribers or whatnot. So definitely want to give you as much exposure on that as well on that front. So moving and switching topics a little bit, man. So we started working on music back, I think it was 2013, I believe, when I moved back to this little town called Jupiter, my hometown. Joey's from there as well, Jupiter, Florida. It's a southeast region of Florida. And at the time, you were still, I think, doing the full-time music thing, or were you at that time going to school? What was your status in life at that time?
Playing gigs around that time, and taking classes as well.
Okay, so you're taking classes. What prompted you to go from the Joey I knew back in the day to really like catapulting into like this business savvy guy who's also, you know, really good at making music and covers and all that stuff? Like, what was that transition like for you?
That's a good question. I I think I've always kind of like had it in me deep down, but I just like, there's so many different avenues that, you know, we could take with music. And it was almost like that indecision of where to get started, because there's so many different routes that you can go. So it was almost overwhelming. And honestly, like, COVID really helped with a lot of this stuff. And I don't mean to sound insensitive, because I know it's sucked for a lot of people, and it's been, you know, but it kind of propelled that that in me to start taking, you know, certain parts of my career more seriously, because for so long I had been playing at, you know, local bars, local gigs, and I knew like I wanted to do more with original music. But, you know, when the consistent gigs are coming through, I'm making good money doing it, and it just felt comfortable. But then once that got taken away with COVID, I'm like, okay, now I really need to reassess my goals and define like what's important to me. And it was really hard, and I battled, you know, with a lot of like, shit, like, what am I gonna do? I have like no income coming through with this because of this virus, and like, you know, why don't I just do what I've always wanted to do and create more of an original music platform? And actually, so to backtrack a little bit, back in January 2019, I had started releasing music, original music, and sort of started like creating a platform or a fan base through releasing that music back in 2019. And then it was like last year where I really started to grow that through the cover videos, like I was saying, and those getting shared, messaging people and getting on Spotify playlists. And that's really helped get, you know, those plays up and create more fans, and just posting more and trying to be authentic over social media, and creating those personal connections with people. So I don't know if that answers your question. I went on kind of a tangent, but
no. And I love hearing it, and I love your train of thought, because I think that explains it in a more raw and authentic way. And like I mentioned to you off air, like, the goal of this podcast isn't necessarily to give people a step-by-step playbook on how to get to where you are. It's just to hear kind of the raw, authentic human that is behind the independent artist, the struggles, the failures, and of course the successes, because we see all of that on social media. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a highlight reel at the end of the day, so you hear all that, or you see all that, but sometimes we don't see below the surface of the water when it comes to that iceberg, right? You just see the tip of the iceberg. So that's kind of what we're getting here with these conversations online. So,
I like
so I appreciate
your analogy,
you sharing that.
by the way.
Thank you, man. Thank you. And so, okay, so we were part of a little band. Obviously, it didn't go anywhere. We kind of just recorded a couple songs, had a blast doing it. I can't even remember the freaking name right now. It's like escaping
I thought
me.
about it the other day. I was talking to somebody. It was like a Fused.
That's what it was. Yes, Fused. And obviously the idea behind Fused was that it was a fusion of all of our genres. Scott Aiken, who is a friend of ours, he's a audio engineer, went to school to Full Sail actually, and I don't think he does it full time anymore, but at the time he was doing he had a studio in our hometown. We were recording out of there, so I brought the hip hop and the rap, and then he brought the, you know, kind of just the pop rock stuff. And then we never mentioned this in this podcast, or haven't mentioned it yet, but you come from the reggae genre, right? So you primarily focus on reggae, so that was a cool fusion of and melting pot of different genres here. So it's kind of nice that you gravitated towards reggae, and I want to ask you how that came about, but specifically in our hometown, obviously it works out really well, because we have different, you know, shops and different places where you could really, you know, play your music, and it definitely kind of mixes in with the atmosphere there.
Definitely.
I didn't have so much of that with my stuff, at least not in Jupiter or the Palm Beach Gardens area, but I'm sure in Lake Worth it would have been a little bit different for me. But that being said, how did you gravitate towards that specific genre, and what made you kind of go down that path and sticking to it?
I think, you know, my brother always played music, and growing up, he's always been a big inspiration for me. But he would always play acoustic guitar in his room and play Sublime songs, and I think like I really liked them when I was in like middle school, high school, and from Sublime it just was kind of a I can't think of the word, but just led to so many other artists of that genre, of that American reggae or reggae rock community, whatever you want to call it. White boy reggae. So it just kind of led to all these different artists that I really connected with and fell in love with. And yeah, definitely growing up in Jupiter was a huge part of that too, because, you know, Jupiter's this local beach town where, you know, they're playing a lot of that music in the local surf shops and local restaurants and whatever. So that also helped to kind of support that, because when it came to playing live and stuff like that, I could definitely, you know, see the spots where I would be able to play at. Yeah, I've always just I've felt connected with reggae because it's about creating change and a positive impact. And, you know, I don't want to just talk about the American reggae, but also the roots reggae behind it. And, you know, reggae started because it became a voice for change, and I've always really felt connected with that that kind of meaning behind it.
So I want to highlight a couple of things here just for the audience to hear, because there's a lot of heartfelt like memories behind why you chose that genre, but there's some variables here that came into play in what I would consider your success, because defining success for me is somebody who's able to live off of their particular skill, talent, etc., artistry in your case, meaning you pay your basic necessities, food, shelter, clothing, etc., right? And then take care of your bills, and then hopefully, ideally, you have a little bit of surplus to create that margin, whether it's saving for a future or, you know, kind of increasing your ability to, I don't know, travel or whatever it is that gives you that wealth of experience in life as well. So, you know, without going into your financials, I'm sure like that's kind of where you are right now, it sounds like. But going back to what I was saying was that you even though it was a heartfelt connection to the genre, like knowing your market, knowing that you could play in your local, you know, in your local scene, right? Being able to tap into that marketplace, leverage that, and then from there using, you know, your resources as far as you know, the what do you call it, your gig money essentially to live off of, and then start to, you know, kind of build up your own original content, your own original music, and then expand to the digital world. I think that's oftentimes overlooked. I think, like, especially in, you know, nowadays, because everything is so digital, it's easier to think, well, if I just put out a song on Spotify, like, it's going to blow up, or if I just get into this particular playlist. But this is years and years in the making for you, and you've really started, at least the foundation behind it was gigging in your local scene. Right. So, I mean, obviously I don't want to retell your story for you, but I just wanted to highlight a couple of those things here because I think it's important to note. So anyways, so you started kind of playing because you were influenced by your brother, and then obviously you took a liking to the genre reggae, and then eventually you started from college. I'm assuming when you were taking classes, you jumped right into or continued your path in gigging on the weekends, or what was that like? Did you ever end up getting like a day job or a desk job or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I worked at a burrito shop for a while. I don't know if you remember Burrito Bros in Jupiter.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think they've since moved locations. Now they're in Jupiter Farms. But I was just like so sick of working that job, and I was playing like 1 gig a week, and I'm like, man, I really want to do music full time. Like, so once I was able to play enough gigs, you know, that's when I finally quit that job and started doing gigs full time.
Did you save up for that, or was it just like you were already getting booked enough times during the week where you knew like your expenses were covered? What was that like for you?
Yeah, it was saving up because I had to, you know, buy the PA system, the mixer, you know, the microphone, cables, guitar, and all that stuff. So I made a point to continue working at the burrito shop until I had enough funds to buy everything that I needed to have a high quality, like, production for my gigs. You know, I didn't want to just use any old PA system. You know, I wanted to make sure that it was quality. So, you know, I made sure to work and save up plenty of money before deciding to do gigs full time. And also just like one thing I wanted to point out about, because we talked about Scott Aiken a little bit.
Yeah.
And just how he's been such a huge, you know, mentor and reason that I'm able to do what I'm doing today. Because I kind of worked as an intern for a while at his recording studio, and he showed me a little bit of the ins and outs of recording from home, you know, and how I could do that. And home recording has been huge for me because I'm not having to pay for studio time.
Right.
And learning to record guitar and vocals from home has just been super helpful. So that's also been another aspect that's helped me as well.
Yeah, man. I'm right there with you. I had, after I graduated college, you know, I didn't have a lot of job opportunities. I ended up working for 2 churches, and that kind of fell through. And when I moved back home with my parents, kind of like, you know, tail between my legs type of thing, like not really knowing what I was going to do, still having a love and a passion for music and trying to pursue that full time. Scott opened his doors and said, hey man, if you want to, you know, kind of come in and work out of my studio, I don't have any specific work that I can pay you for, but you know, maybe here and there you can, you know, help me out with some clients or get your own clients and whatnot and so forth. And during that time, he also taught me some of the, you know, same tricks and tips that I use for my own recording here at home. So huge advantage, obviously, to have your own home studio. And if any of you guys have not made that investment towards a home studio, or you're thinking about getting one and just don't know where to start, I'll leave some resources below, but definitely doesn't require a whole lot to get started. And as you continue grow and developing, like I'm sure you can relate to this, Joey, like you can start investing in more equipment, better equipment, seeing what works for you, seeing what doesn't work for you, and so on and so forth.
100%.
Yeah, man. Okay, so let me get back to, so you started saving up, you got some equipment, and now you're doing this full time. Now, so you're gigging mostly, and are you teaching on the side? Is there anything else that could potentially like supplement your income before obviously 2019 or really 2020, the pandemic, or was it just gigs? That's just really gigs, what sustained you. Wow, huge.
Just kind of went full force into the gigs.
Full force.
Yeah.
That's amazing, man. Awesome. And were you doing this solo, or I know you have a band, so can you talk to me a little bit about your band and how that came about?
Yeah. The band kind of came about just from jamming with some friends and having a passion for playing live. And that band is called Jawzilla. And now I also play under just Joey Calderiao band using my name. And it's the same group of guys, just kind of different types of gigs. But yeah, over the years, I've been playing lots of solo, duo, trio, full band gigs. You know, whatever is needed for the gig.
Yeah,
but
you guys played a festival recently, right here in Tampa?
Reggae Rise Up. Yeah, that was super cool.
That's huge, man. Have you played like a festival of that size before, or what was that journey like for you?
Not of that size. Yeah, that was probably one of the most wild things we've played so far. But yeah, just super humbling experience and just awesome to be having, you know, our name alongside all these artists that we look up to.
It's crazy.
So that was really cool.
Yeah. How did that come about, if you don't mind me asking?
An email, somebody sent me an email and it ended up in my spam folder, and I just had so happened to be checking my spam folder for whatever reason, and I was like a week late, and I'm like, oh crap, I missed like this amazing opportunity because this ended up in the wrong folder, and luckily it wasn't too late. I got back to them and it all worked out. But yeah, they reached out to us and sent an email, and it was just as simple as that.
Wow.
But yeah, we've had a lot of cool opportunities this past year. One of the fans that's on the Joey Bag of Donuts page reached out to us about playing their festival in Utah, and so it was really cool. As a band, we got to travel over to Utah. We hadn't played a show outside the state before that, so that was really a cool experience. And we did like a short 2-week tour up the East Coast, and yeah, all these great things are happening, and I'm just trying to keep that momentum going, you know.
Right.
So.
What do you think, if you can identify this, and if you don't know the answer to this question, don't worry about it. Like, do you think that there is something that in the business world we would say like a differentiating factor within the marketplace, right? Something that makes you, like, whether it's you're targeting a niche audience or whether you've brought something to the table that nobody has. Is there something specific that you have identified or that you've consciously been aiming at in terms of differentiating you between, number one, all solo gig players or gig players period, and then number two, all solo and or band gig players within your specific genre, American reggae or just reggae in general? Like, have you identified that, or is that still something that like you're not really sure of?
Yeah, I don't know that I do have an answer. I'm still kind of trying to find my way around that. Right now I'm just trying to work hard and use that momentum to keep, you know, posting, to create consistent content and engage with people. So I don't know that I've found my niche yet, but maybe it will kind of come through, you know, all this that's happening. But I'm just trying to create a positive platform for my music and inspire people through it. I did notice that not a lot of people from the reggae rock realm were doing a lot of those cover videos, so that could have been helpful. I've noticed that not everyone's doing Facebook groups, so not a lot of those people are also doing TikToks either, and trying some different stuff to see what works best.
Yeah, I think from the outside looking in, and again, I wanted to give you the opportunity to speak into it before I did, but like you've really worked hard, and I can tell, at your personal brand, right? Whether you call it your personal brand or not, like that's what it is. You're being authentic, who you are. You have a consistent, you know, sound. It's professional. You have a consistent look, very well polished and tailored in the sense of like it's consistent across the board. Everything between your cover art to the stickers to the merch, all of that is high level. It's not.
Thank you, man.
It doesn't look like you skip over any of the details or you cut corners, right?
Yep.
And have you always been like that, or is this something that's been a little bit more recent?
Yeah. I mean, I'm a little bit OCD about certain things, and you know, I like you said, the cover art. I take pride in art, and I didn't do it myself, but you know, I made sure to hire someone that I felt connected with their art and would bring kind of you know, their talent to the artwork, and music production is super important to me. And yeah, just the brand in general has always been something that's been important to me. So I want to make sure that I'm doing all that stuff right. And I do take pride in that stuff. So thank you.
Yeah, no, absolutely, man. It's worthy to be, you know, recognized and praised here. So a little bit about your current life circumstances, because I've mentioned on this podcast before, you know, I'm married, I have 3 kids, I have a mortgage. So my flexibility and my ability to take risk in the music world, being as mercurial and as like volatile as it is to be in the music world, period, isn't as high as somebody who maybe is in a different life circumstance, right? Now, either that or they have like, you know, like a solid full-time thing that's working for them, whether it's investments or a job. I'll give you an example. You may have heard of this guy. His name's Benja. He's out of Miami. He does reggae. He started out as a Christian hip hop artist and kind of worked his way around kind of the reggae realm. He has the look. He plays the part. But as far as I am aware, from kind of some of the documentary stuff that he's done, he started out in real estate, did really well there as I forgot what he called it. I think it was like a public adjuster or something like that. Started buying rental properties, and from what I know, he has, you know, kind of that income that's consistently there for him, and he's able to do a little bit more experimentation with his music and kind of build his personal brand. So that being the case, like what do you think you've done to either leverage your current resources, or is there anything that has kind of held you together in terms of, like, you know, the downs of maybe not booking those gigs, or you know, obviously COVID, the pandemic, like what has kind of helped you stay afloat financially as an independent artist to continue that momentum, or at least to not transition over to something else full time?
Right. That's another great question. Yeah, I've taken a lot of the corporate gigs, and at times those can feel a little bit soul crushing, if I'm being completely honest. But at the same time, I kind of justify it in my head. It's like, you know, they're gonna hire somebody anyway, and they're gonna hire a musician anyway, and you know, this money, me as an artist, I'm adding to their lives by making them happy, even if, you know, I have my thoughts about them or whatever, even if I'm being judgy, you know, and I recognize that I am. But you know, that money also, it pays well and helps fund my original projects, and that I'm very thankful for, to have those corporate gigs. So same thing, yeah, like certain weddings that I've played, but weddings are a lot of fun, so I don't feel that same way. But yeah, so like taking those certain gigs that are a bit higher paying, and then that money will go straight back into studio time or artwork or ads or, you know, whatever. But yeah, it all comes from gigs, or maybe just taking an extra restaurant or bar gig that week, even though I feel a little bit tired or don't necessarily want to, but it's helped, you know.
So how many times are you gigging per week right now?
Anywhere from probably an average or about 5 days a week.
5 days a week. Wow. Okay. Yeah. So obviously that makes sense in terms of, you know, your full-time income, having that. And it's funny you say that as far as like not liking, you know, certain aspects of gigging specific to like the corporate stuff, because I was talking to a buddy of mine. Actually, he works for DistroKid, and he, you know, he's mentioned he's had conversations with friends who are signed to major labels, and obviously those friends who are kind of more on the independent route. And every path has its like sucky parts, right? And it's like, whether it's you're signed to a label and you're having to do these pop like tracks that you absolutely hate and your name's on it, or in your case, you know, you're an independent artist trying to make ends meet, and not really trying to make ends meet, but like in order to kind of keep the momentum going, you're taking gigs that you would otherwise probably not take if money wasn't an issue. So that makes a lot of sense, man.
Yeah. And I've always been a firm believer, is like, you gotta work really hard to get to where you want to be. And like when I was saving up for that music gear to gig and working at that burrito shop, like I knew that I had to work almost every day, even though I hated it, but to save up enough money to start gigging. Like I would never suggest to somebody that if they wanted to play gigs full time, I wouldn't suggest for them to quit their job immediately and just start gigging and just start going at it. I would suggest keep doing what you're doing. Make sure you have enough funds to focus on this kind of on the side. And then once you're good enough to gig full time or have all the equipment, then quit the other job. But
right.
I think that kind of goes with anything. So
okay, yeah, absolutely, man. And even like talking about like your kind of like expenses, I guess, are, you know, were you keeping expenses low? Were you renting? Were you buying? Where were you living kind of like during this transition? That, because for me, like my biggest expenses is housing, right? Like that's just fact of the matter. I think that's most Americans' like biggest expense. So how are you keeping expenses low? And or were you receiving investment money? Like were investors pouring into it? Were you sponsored? What was that like, if you don't mind speaking?
Well, yeah, like during that transition from going to a day job to gigging full time, that was probably about 6 to 8 years ago.
And how old are you right now?
I'm 26.
26. Okay, so around 20.
Yeah, so around 20 years old. I was living with my parents, so I didn't have that housing expense.
Huge.
Yeah, so that was definitely huge, you know. Not having to do that. I definitely had that experience a little bit easier than maybe most, you know, not having to have all those expenses. So
Yeah, and I think it sometimes we put that on ourselves, right? Like at least where I come from, Colombia, like it's not rare to see a 30-year-old still living at home with their parents. Like it's not rare to live with your parents until something bigger happens, like you get married or a parent passes away or something like that, right? So in that regard, like I've always seen kind of American culture, like it sometimes it doesn't make as much financial sense, and people are starting to catch drift now because the housing market is crazy. So it's like expensive to rent, expensive to buy. Obviously people have unfortunately had lapses in employment, so it's like they're forced to live back home with their parents or whatever. But ultimately, whether you decide to take that route or you're put into that route, and or you do another thing, which I don't have the capacity to do, but there are people who do it. It's called house hacking, where essentially you purchase a property with multiple rooms or maybe even multiple units, and you rent out the other properties and allow that to pay for your mortgage or your rent or whatever the case is. Like now you have the flexibility to do what you're doing, which is gigging and not having to worry about that house expense. But now you're living in Lake Worth, so I'm assuming you're renting. Or are you buying, or did you buy a house, or what's?
Yeah, I'm just renting in the meantime.
Cool. Makes sense, man. And not to get too personal, but the reason why I bring this up is because you're putting a lot of sacrifice into building your brand, and it feels like until you're in a place, at least this is speaking for myself, where I would be comfortable enough to take care of other people, whether it's like kids or parents or whatever the case is, like I wouldn't jump into that into that commitment. And again, that flexibility with your line of work is huge, right? 'Cause the ebbs and flows of it. And you mentioned in the beginning of the conversation, just even how social media takes a toll, and you need that time to step back. And I think having those things in place, whether it's a savings account that accounts for 3 to 6 months worth of expenses for you, and after you start doing gigs full time, that you can count on that at least, or you have no housing expenses, or maybe you have a roommate or somebody else that you're sharing living expenses with, and that kind of works out in your favor. So all these different things I think kind of play into the potential success of like an actual independent artist versus somebody who has to fully work and just kind of gigs on the side, which not knocking that, because there's equal value in both, right? So what's next for you, Joey? What are you looking forward to in the next I don't know, year, 5 years, 10 years? What's your ultimate goal, if you have one, or like what are you looking forward to in the next in the near future for you?
So my big goal right now is to finish up an album that has been in the works for a very long time. Probably some of these songs like 6 years old. I've always wanted to put out like a full length album, which I kind of just did like 2 weeks ago, but it was kind of.
I saw that. What's the name of it so people can catch it?
That's Moving Mountains Deluxe, and nice. It's re-recorded versions of old songs that I did. I've been learning more about home recording and how to get a higher quality production, so I wanted to re-release some songs. And I also threw some other singles that have already been released on there as well. So it shows up on Spotify and iTunes as an album, but I don't really consider it a full-length album in my heart, I guess. So next year, I have a big project in the works, and with all new songs, and that is what I consider to be my first full-length album, and that is my baby in the works right now. So.
And are you releasing independently? Have you partnered up with labels for this particular project, or anything that you've worked on recently?
Yeah, just independent. I have a manager. Shout out Will. He's awesome, and kind of really helps me keep on track with my goals, and with communication and emails and all that stuff too. But yeah, just trying to focus and on that big goal for next year. That's the big one.
That's huge, man. That's an amazing goal to set for yourself after so many years of gigging and kind of putting in the work. I mean, it's taken this long for you to actually put out your first album, which speaks a lot into the person that you are, and of course, kind of just the tact behind everything that you're doing. You touched on having a manager. That first time I really knew or heard about that. So, is he like a business manager, touring manager? Like, what would you call him if you could categorize it?
he's a little bit of all of it.
Sure.
Not so much touring manager, but actually he did manage the last tour. So, but I'm just saying that that's not like his main thing. But mostly like the day-to-day stuff, you know, we'll have a call a couple times a week, just like what are your goals for the week, and the accountability is honestly probably the most helpful thing, just to have someone that, you know, cheers you on and is like, all right, you know, you've got this week, you know, where are you? You know, he helps with getting back to certain emails, reaching out to people, and he's got a lot of great contacts. So it's kind of stuff like that.
That's huge.
The day-to-day stuff. So
yeah, the accountability and the day-to-day stuff is probably the two most important things. I mean, you want to have somebody that holds you accountable to, you know, your dreams and goals, obviously, because sometimes you don't feel like doing the little things that get you
exactly
there. And then, of course, relieving some of that day-to-day stress so that you could be creative. That's awesome. If you were to advise a younger artist, say you 5, 6, 10 years ago, about when the right time to hiring a manager would be, are you comfortable with kind of saying that to somebody, or at least to our audience if they're watching? Right.
I would say not even so much like a time thing, but like when the work starts to see, I'm getting tongue tied, or like can't think of the word, but like when it inhibits some of your creative you know, process, or you know, because it came to a point where I was getting so many emails and messages that I was like, damn, I can't even like work on this song without being bombarded with new messages or whatever. And that's kind of where, you know, Will has really helped me, or just getting to that next level of like, I want to play this festival, but they won't talk to me until I have a manager, or, you know, stuff like that too. So, because there's been plenty of people I've reached out to myself that haven't gotten back to me just because they just see my name. They don't really see much credibility. But when you have a manager, you know, I think it maybe just seems a little bit more official, I guess.
Yeah.
So
I would agree. I think it is definitely a what you would call, I'm trying to think of the word, it's kind of like vetting, right? Like you're vetting somebody based off of like certain things and criteria, like okay, if this person has a manager, like there's clearly an investment there, and they're clearly making a certain amount of money to be able to afford that, and of course they're also they kind of have their shit together, for lack of a better word, right? So so that makes sense, man. I think that's important. Two key factors that I wanted to highlight was when the work gets overwhelming, where you can no longer perform the thing that's bringing in the bread, and number two, when you're trying to take that to the next level, when you're trying to take your business venture as an independent artist to that next level, and as much as you try, it's just not happening for you. You might have to bring in reinforcements to delegate that, and to be able to give you a little bit more leverage, right?
Absolutely.
I think not everybody, I mean, at least from my personal experience, you know, the artists that I've seen, and even myself included, it just felt like you had to get a manager right away. You had to be sent to a label right away. Right. But it took you time to get there, obviously, and it sounds like it's been a work, you know, over a couple of years.
And also, just something I want to say is that, you know, having a manager hasn't been like this like huge breakthrough in my career, just because I'm still having to do so much on my own. Just that's just the name of the game. It makes things easier, you know. I'm still having to work just as hard, but maybe, you know, taking a little bit of that delegation and, you know, putting it on somebody else, and you know, but I'm still having to work my ass off, and you know, so it's nothing like, oh, I gotta get a manager and that will be the breakthrough in my career. It's like I knew when the right time was, and it's helped a lot. So that's kind of what I'll say.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
Well, listen, man, I appreciate all your insight and your input. I'm excited for your journey, and of course the album that you have in the works. Again, not just as somebody who's known you personally, but even as a fan. Like, I've seen you progress, grow, mature. Your professionalism has definitely been taken to a new level, and hearing the things that you're doing kind of behind the scenes and even just your workflow, I mean, that's inspiring to me. So hopefully our audience can take some stuff away from this particular episode. And as much as you want to join the podcast, we'll definitely be happy to have you. I'll probably ask you and bug you here and there if possible, if you're interested in coming back on the show. Any last words or any last things that you would... Hold on, my kids are yelling in the background. So any last words or any last things that you wanted to go ahead and kind of just share or impart with the audience, whether it's again any other promotion or anything else that you wanted to share?
Just I encourage people to take care of their mental health, because it's hard to really focus on much else when you're not feeling good. So it's important to work hard and to focus on work, but it's also equally or more so important to focus on being you and to take care of the people around you and as well as yourself. So those relationships for sure. Yeah.
And man, thank you for touching on that, because I think that's a big topic and an important topic that maybe you could expound upon a little bit more. Like I remember watching this video yesterday or a couple days ago, and it was this. I clearly listen to a lot of finance guys and business gurus and things of that nature. So I'll bring that into this podcast. But specific to this segment or this section, what we're talking about right now is, he said, this guy named Cardone, he's a real estate mogul and has like tons of properties. I mean, the guy's pretty controversial in terms of like the business world and his business tactics. But that being said, he used to be a drug addict. Like, this guy was just a complete mess. Like, somebody you would never expect to be a successful business owner in his late 40s, early 50s, however old he is now. In his early 20s, he was just like strung out on drugs. And he talked about, like, before learning a skill, before working hard, before trying to get all these things in motion, he had to work on his self-development, right? And part of that self-development, I think, at least the way I see it, is taking care of your mental health, is taking care of your relationships, is taking care of the things that feed you continuously, so that you have a clear mind and a clear head to navigate. Because if you're going, but if you're going on the wrong direction, like, that's not helping anyone, definitely not helping the people around you. So that mental clarity for me has been huge, just getting my house in order, for lack of a better word, making my bed, another expression, every morning, and just trying to make sure that those things are there, so that when it's time to perform, not just on stage, but like even just writing emails or doing podcasts or whatever it is, like, I have a clear head to be able to fully and effectively and productively work on that specific thing. And that way it's more effective, and it requires less time because I'm not dragging my feet. And then ultimately I can get back to like recreation, meditation, prayer, time with my family, whatever the case is, right?
Got you.
Cool, man. Well, loved having you on the podcast, dude. Always good to catch up with you again.
Appreciate it.
A huge fan. For all the people watching this podcast, again, I will link all his stuff below, and you'll see it throughout the video. If you're watching this on YouTube, if you're not on YouTube, make sure to head to the YouTube channel so you can check out both his channel, and then of course subscribe to the DIY Artist Podcast. This concludes, I believe it or not, this actually concludes season 1 of the DIY Artist Podcast. The next episode, which will be the last episode, will actually be just an independent, just me kind of rambling for a little bit here and there. But this really concludes the last of the interview. So again, big ending here to the podcast, at least for the season 1. Loved having you on here, Joey.
Thanks so much for having me, man. Thank you for all that you do for this, music community and for inspiring people through this platform.
Nah, man, trying to and learning a lot from you guys, and learned a lot from you today, man. So thank you for hopping on here. And yeah, man, until next time.